You sit in an empty room, legs crossed, arms hanging loosely at your side. It is dusty and smells somewhat of mold. You hate it in here. But being anywhere else right now seems even worse. Flashbacks from the last few days flicker before your mind's eye. None of them good. Failure after failure after failure. Track the target and report back the location of his lair. Fail. Find the farmer's 12 missing goats. You only found 11. Fail. Steal the pocket watch from the pretentious merchant. You actually accomplished that one, but it led to way more trouble than it was worth. So, failed again. The list continues. A series of extravagant flops. Sitting there, forlorn and dejected, you can almost imagine the clatter of dice as some all-powerful entity determines your fate with a game of chance. Whoever they are, they need new dice. These keep coming up short. A knock on the doorframe interrupts your daydream. "We've got a new gig. You in?" the bard proclaims, jovial as always. You sigh and consider sitting this one out. But you won't. You don't give up that easily. And besides, the dice have to go your way eventually, right? Right? Hello everyone, my name is Corey, and I'd like to welcome you to T3RPG, Therapeutic TableTop Role-Playing Games. If you're new to the channel, which is probably the case since it's still pretty new, we explore a variety of topics here related to tabletop role-playing from a mental health perspective. Today, we're going to discuss tips for those times in our lives when we roll a natural one. If you're familiar with tabletop role-playing games, you probably know exactly what that means, and maybe even cringed a little bit. If not, you are justifiably confused about what I mean when I say roll a natural one. Allow me to illuminate. Our topic for discussion is distress tolerance. Distress tolerance is your ability to endure, not ignore, stressful situations or emotional pain. Despite your best efforts, regardless of all of your planning, sometimes things don't go your way. This is what I'm referring to when I talk about rolling a natural one. Negative emotions are a part of life. Bad things happen all the time. Distress tolerance allows you to withstand the pain of those events and emotions and navigate a path through them in a way that is productive and healthy. If we do not have those tools, when we are in pain or feel uncomfortable, we are likely to act impulsively. And when we react in such a way, as I'm sure you've experienced, a common result is that either we or those around us get hurt. My gaming group used to play a Star Wars RPG. The game used special dice, and one of the potential options when you rolled was a result called despair. This represented the dramatic negative effects of a decision gone epically wrong, similar to a natural one. I like this term because it really highlights that no matter how well you plan, nothing is ever truly in your control. The best laid plans can and absolutely will at some point end in disappointment or frustration or even despair. So what do we do? Before we explore some of the healthier tools we can use to better endure stressful situations or emotional pain, let's take a look at two broad categories that represent many of the unproductive ways we tend to rely on to cope. The first is self-destructive behaviors. This involves those obvious forms of self-harm, such as cutting or burning and drug or alcohol misuse. But it can also include over or under eating and increased risk-taking. Whether conscious or otherwise, the thought here is that if we can feel a pain we are more in control of, then the despair of stressful situations or emotional pain will be reduced. or at the very least, we'll be distracted from the real problem. Sadly, this is rarely the case. After harming themselves, the most prevailing feeling that my clients usually experience is shame. If your default response is one of these, please talk to someone before you do something you can't undo. And if you're struggling in the moment or know someone who is, there are hotlines you can call if you or they are considering self-harm. The second unhealthy coping skill is withdrawal or avoidance. Withdrawal can be conscious or unconscious. Maybe you leave the room or change the subject. Maybe you shut down internally or agree for the sake of agreeing, whatever it takes to get out of the situation. Avoidance tends to be a more conscious decision overall. You know there is an uncomfortable discussion you need to have or an unpleasant situation you should confront, but you ignore it. Do you know someone who is suddenly working a lot of overtime or acting sick to get out of school? It's possible they are avoiding something. Avoidance or withdrawal can be healthy responses, but only when their use is limited. Sometimes we need a minute to process what we just experienced. We'll discuss that later with distractions. But we need to be intentional in addressing the pain-causing situation soon afterward. If not, we will discover that the pain still exists, and unfortunately, that it has likely escalated to be even more debilitating. In all of these, the result is ultimately the same. We do not get what we truly want. We feel more shame, more pain, and more incapable of enduring what life throws at us in the future. When I play games with my teenage or pre-adolescent clients, whether it be something like a TTRPG or chess or even Connect 4, I don't pull any punches. I play to win every single time. Why? Kids don't like to lose. It gives me an opportunity in real time to explore how they respond to the most stressful thing they have ever experienced: losing at Uno for the 20th time in a row. In those moments, I get to see their response. And at this point, I've probably seen them all. In a therapeutic setting, natural ones can be amazing subject material to explore how we experience distress and how we tolerate it. Around the game table, whether you call it a nat 1, a despair, a critical failure, or some other term, how do you personally respond to that? It's easier to shrug off or even laugh about a plan that has gone awry in a game than it has in real life. But not always. None of us like to feel useless, and after your 5th natural 1 for the night, you begin to wonder why you even showed up. Or what if that malevolent dice roll results in a character death? The hours you or your friend has poured into creating that particular story has suddenly come to an end. That can sting, and we might even walk away feeling cheated. From a character perspective, it can be fun to explore how your avatar would respond in those situations. Yes, you the player might think it is funny to roll a natural 1 on a medical check, declaring a perfectly healthy individual to be dead on arrival. But in game, your character would likely be mortified and question their life choices. And the others in your party will probably want you nowhere near a first aid kit ever again. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope it was fun and or informative. If so, please take a second to like and subscribe. It really helps me achieve my goal of global domination. For those who would like to support the channel and help it grow, you can also find my Ko-fi link in the description. And finally, drop some comments about what you liked or would like to see in the future. I really enjoy hearing from you. Remember, whether we're sitting around a table or stepping out our front door, there's a whole world to explore. It's so much better when we take that journey together. See you soon.